This time on Deep Sky Labs, we're looking at automatic flat panels and what happens when you buy a no-name one off eBay. All right, welcome back to Deep Sky Labs. I'm Francisco. It's been really cloudy here the last couple of weeks, so I did what I usually do when it's cloudy and it's late at night, and I bought some more stuff off of eBay of sort of questionable, notoriety. As a wrap up, in the last I keep buying stuff on eBay video, we talked about these focusers, and I'll put links to that up here somewhere. I did finally get my adapter to go from this really nice red focuser to big SCT thread, so I'm going to do an upcoming video setting up my imaging rig. In the meantime, this really nice box arrived, and as you can see here, it is a Gemini Astro automatic flat panel cover, 150 millimeters. So this is going to be for my William Optics FLT 110, which is a 110 millimeter refractor, and basically anything I have that's smaller than that, I'll be able to use this automatic flat panel. And then for comparison, I also have this Wanderer Astro. I believe this is a 240 millimeter Wanderer Astro automatic flat panel. These are pretty different price-wise. This Wanderer Astro one, again, it's a really nice one that comes from a U.S. supplier, so really good support. And then this one is a Gemini, so the support is probably whatever this weird email address is on the side of the box. But let's get into talking about what is even in here. How does it even go together? Because opening this, there's just a bunch of bags in here, so I don't know what's going on. So let's make sure I didn't get scammed, and let's see what these flat panels are up to. All right, so let's talk about, while I unbox this, let's talk about why you would want a flat panel. So this is my old flat panel. It is a white shirt, and I would stretch this part here over the end of the telescope, and I would point it at the sky, and you would take pictures using, like if you're using Nina to take your pictures, there's an automatic flats sequence thing in there that'll automatically sort of calibrate how long your exposure has to be. But I'm going to point you to Quiv's video, Quiv the Lazy Geek. If you haven't subscribed to him, go subscribe. He's got a great channel. The only reason my astrophotography is anywhere near as good as it is or isn't is because of him. So I'll link to his stuff above here. But he has this really good video about flats and all sorts of calibration frames, of which flats are just one of, like, I think 4 different calibration frames that you might be interested in. But the reason that we do this is there's vignetting, and there's all sorts of different bad things that can happen in your optical imaging train, like in your telescope setup, that you can correct for if you understand what they are. One of those bad things that can happen is like dust motes. So you might get dust in your optics, and they sent me a filter. I don't know why they sent me a filter. I did not buy this. I hope everything else in here is what I ordered. So the problem with ordering weird stuff, they just sent me a Astro Scorpio luminance filter. That's weird. I'm going to set that aside, and we'll take a look at that later. But a flat panel essentially gives you an even light source that will be spread across your entire the sort of entire objective, right? So the entire front part of your telescope. And okay, there's one bag. The reason you would want to do that is, there's another bag, that if you have a known even amount of light, and that's everything that's in there. If you have a known even amount of light, you can see where things get darker, right? You can see where the light sort of starts falling off at the edges of the frame. You can also see where your dust motes are for that, imaging session. So let's say you happen to have some dust on like a filter, or, on your camera itself. If you take flats, you can basically use math to remove that from the picture. It's really cool. I didn't really do them until quite recently, And I watched Quiv's video, again, on the flats, and that made me realize I probably needed to do it. And then I ran this experiment here, which I'll link to as well, which was about me thinking that a really fast focal ratio telescope wasn't going to make much of a difference. And at first it didn't until I took flats. So as soon as I made that video, I realized I should probably start doing flats more often. So again, I started doing what are called t-shirt flats, which is where you just put a t-shirt over the end of your telescope and you take a picture of the sky, because all you're trying to do is create an even light. Or you can get fancy and order something like this from Gemini, or we'll look at the Wanderer Astro one in a minute. So it looks like it comes in 3 bags. Let's start with this one because I'm pretty sure this is the actual panel. It's 150 millimeters. So this is the panel right here. And this panel's only job is to create a nice even illumination. This looks like it's actual all carbon fiber. Man, the quality on this is really good. This is screwed together, which is nice, so I think it could be serviced in the future. So that's the actual panel itself. Let's see what's in this box. Actually, let's do this one next. Most of the time they attach to your telescope with very large zip ties, which is kind of funny. And there's, usually they're the removable zip ties. I actually don't think these are removable, so I don't know about that. And then there were these other zip ties in the box, which was kind of strange. So you get like a bunch of different zip ties. There's your flat panel. What else is in here? Oh, cool. This looks like a remote in case you want to do this manually. That's kind of fun. I think that even has batteries in it, which is cool. And some cables and adapters. Why would you need to? I'm sure it'll become apparent why we need that in a minute. And another adapter and another USB cable. This actually feels really high quality. Like, it feels like it's one of those silicone bendy ones. It is just USB 2, but that's fine. It's just a flat panel. I can't imagine you needing much more. And then in this last one, I'm guessing, is the actual motor. So these flat panels are motorized, or at least this one is. Oh yeah, there we go. That's everything. So this motor here, one side attaches to, there's a motor inside, and then this side is just freewheeling. And this is nice. It's like all machined aluminum and with a little carbon fiber panel. And you can see there's a little recess, like indent here, where it's got the IR receiver. But let me get this set up on a, actually, let's go through the setup here. So did they include the little tool? They did. They included all the tools you need. So this will make a lot more sense. If you've never seen or used one of these, this will make a lot more sense once I get it set up. But again, the goal here is just to, on command, put a very even source of light in front of your telescope so that you can take calibration frames. And like the theme of that last one where I was ordering no-name stuff, I do have some Gemini parts. I use their focusers on a couple of my telescopes, and I really like their Gemini focusers. It's usually not the hardware that's an issue. It's usually the software. So we'll have to plug these in and see sort of how they perform when it comes to the software. But let me finish getting this set up. All right, so this is not the telescope that I intend to use it with, but it is about the same size. And so this will serve as a good stand-in for the telescope that I'm actually going to use this for. So you've got your telescope, your camera goes on this side here, and then this is your objective, or the front part, the part you point at the sky. And in order to take flats, you need to provide this part of your telescope with a nice even field of light. And that's where this flat panel comes in. It essentially just goes like that and covers up the entire objective. And you can turn this on at varying brightness levels to get it to illuminate as evenly as possible. So let's see if we can get this thing turned on. It came with a remote, which is really cool. So that just plugs in there. This says Astro Automatic Flat Panel V2. that's cool. I don't know what improvements they made between V1 and V2, but these are kind of nice. Let's see, does this actually have a battery in it? It does. I love when they include batteries with their stuff. Just got to get this little plastic tab out. If you get one of these, make sure you take this clear plastic tab out of the remote. I'm going to assume that that's working. Okay. And let me get it some 12 volt power, which I think is really all we need to get it to fire up. Ah, that's what these adapters are for. Okay, so they include a DC 5.5 by 2.1 to whatever tiny connector they use. They include one of those, but they also include an adapter in case you've got like a weird length. And this will, I'm guessing, goes DC 5.5 by 2.1 to, again, their standard connection. That's pretty cool. All right, let's get this thing plugged in and see what it does. So it's got a power port right here on the side next to where you plug the actual flat panel in. You can plug this itty bitty thing in there. Okay. One of the things I want to test is whether you need to use external power if you have it plugged in with USB, because it'd be nice if I didn't have, an additional cable to worry about. Let me get this thing powered up. Okay, I've given it power. Let's see. Ooh. Hold on, I just bumped my camera. Stop jiggling. Okay, I've given it power. Let me grab the remote and see what happens. Oh, there we go. It's dim, but it's there. That turns it through the modes. Oh, that's open and close. Okay, so that's as bright as it gets. Honestly, I think that's as bright as it needs to get. Motor moves nice. It doesn't close all the way, but so you can imagine this goes on your telescope like this, like that. And now all that the telescope sees is, actually I might even be able to see it. All that the telescope sees is this nice even field of light just in there, just like that. And I don't know why it's beeping at me. And then this should open it. Hello? Well, there we go. And you can see it'll automatically open it. It's not too fast, but honestly it doesn't have to be. And it opens it to about 90 degrees, which should be fine. I wish it opened it a little bit more. And then you can turn it off. And there you go. The cool thing about this is USB control. So I'll plug it in at some point into the computer and then we'll talk through some of that. But the hardware-wise, it seems pretty nice. I kind of want to compare it to the Wanderer Astro panel. So let me get this small scope out of the way. Okay, so this is the Gemini side over here. All right, Gemini. They are going to be different sizes, and that's because, well, I wanted them for different telescopes. So this one is going to be, like I said, for the FLT 110, and then this is for my Celestron C8. Because I want to start getting into that one with Hyperstar more, and the flats really matter. All right, same sort of deal. Oh, let me get this in the shot. Same sort of deal. This comes with zip ties, but these are much bigger, which makes sense. This is a much bigger panel. Oh my goodness, these are huge zip ties. And what else we got in here? The nice carbon fiber panel, which looks good. And we've got same sort of deal. There's a nice big flat piece there. And it comes with a power cable and a USB cable, which looks a lot like the ZWO ones. And that's it. Okay, so a lot less assembly with the Wanderer Astro one. That's kind of nice. But I don't think I can control this one with an infrared remote. No, okay, so we'll have to connect this to a computer to see. That is kind of a downer if you're using like, I don't know, if you're using like a DSLR or something. I think they make a version of the Wanderer Astro panel that does use that does have an infrared controller. This is just not that one because honestly, I don't really need it. So, yeah, there you go. There's the Wanderer Astro panel. Let me get this guy closed. I don't really know what's going on. I just plugged it back into my 12-volt power, and now it's not doing anything. I don't smell any magic smoke. Plugged in. Oh man, I think this thing just broke. Well, I mean, I guess I can issue it a DNF. It did not finish, so for all the experiments, I got it. That's so crazy that it would just die like that. Hold on. I'm going to try a slightly different power source. Oh. Okay, so apparently it was my battery that died. Oh, thank goodness. I was not looking forward to sending that email. All I was trying to do is get this thing to close so it looked like the other one. Ah! That's all right. We'll get these plugged into a computer, but I'm glad it's not broken at least. All right, let's plug these in and see what they do. Okay, now that we've got them both connected, and this is the Gemini Auto Flat Panel app version 1.01. I don't want to do the firmware right now. Thank you, Wanderer Empire. So I've got the camera set so that you can see the panels. So I'm going to turn them both off. There you go. And then I'm going to set them first to their maximum brightness. And so for the Gemini Auto Flat Panel, there are these two brightness modes, high BM, low BM. And you can set it between 0 and 255, but you know, it's basically like doubles the range that you get. So we're going to set it to high BM 255. Turn that on. There you go. And then let's turn the Wanderer Astro one to 255 as well. And there you go. The Wanderer Astro one doesn't look as bright. Honestly, that's not that big a deal because you don't really need them to be that bright. So let's set the Gemini to low brightness mode. Wow, that's really dim. Okay. I'm going to wait for it to get dark to do this a little bit more, but let's set it back to high brightness mode. And then we'll set it to, let's say, 128. Set. There you go. So they're about the same brightness there. This Wanderer one does not get as bright, but again, that's not really a problem when you're doing flats. Let's see, there you go. And then I'm going to set these to like their dimmest, so that one's, well, actually I think the dimmest here would be 1. You can barely tell that that's even on. And I'm going to set the dimmest in low brightness mode to 1 as well. All right, we're going to try this again when it's dark, but here they are both set to their dimmest, but during the day it's evening here. It's really hard to tell exactly what's going on between the two. But I can tell you that on their brightest settings, the Gemini does get brighter. Now, it is a smaller panel, and so that might have some effect on the brightness, but I would assume that they would compensate. Yeah, so there's both of them set to their brightest modes. We'll try this again as soon as it gets dark. One little thing, the Wanderer Astro will not function without a 12-volt attached. The Gemini doesn't have a 12-volt attached right now. It does not care, which is kind of cool. You can attach a 12-volt if you want, especially if you're using it for remote. But if you don't want to attach a 12-volt and you just want to give it USB power, as long as it's a clean power source, it should work just fine. While you're in here, you can configure the sort of angles of opening and closing. And you can also configure the 5 settings in the infrared remote. So that's kind of cool. So you can have custom brightness, and then the infrared remote will just switch between these different brightness settings. The Wanderer Astro has its own nice features. You can do the same sort of configurable positions in angles for closed and open. But it does have a flat panel heater, which is kind of cool. And what you can do here is help evaporate any dew. So you can have these 3 settings. Before we get too much into the nighttime, I am going to crack open Nina, and let's see what Nina thinks of both of these flat panels. I see Wanderer. Oh yeah, they're both in here. So I've got the Gemini flat panel cover and the Wanderer Empire cover. So they are both in here. That's awesome. Okay, so the sun has set, and both panels here are set at the same brightness. I'm turning the Wanderer up to 255 and the Gemini up to 255, again under the high brightness profile. And from this camera angle, they look really similar. Now I'm going to set the Wanderer to its lowest and the Gemini to its lowest in the low illumination mode. And you can see the Gemini gets much, much dimmer. We'll do some high speed footage to see if there's any flicker, but as far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be any. When you switch the Gemini to its high brightness mode, one matches the one on the Wanderer Astro panel. And let's do 40 on both. They look pretty similar. If anything, maybe the Gemini again is slightly brighter. So the numbers won't go over, 1-to-1 between them. The Gemini seems to be operating slightly brighter, but it does have that low illumination mode. Here you can see 120, which is, about halfway up the scale. And on the low illumination mode, this is still pretty bright, but I'm just flipping between these because I'm really trying to show off during nighttime conditions what the range of these can be. But let's do something a little bit different. So it's just now getting dark enough to actually put the Gemini flat panel on the FLT 110 and see what it can do. I want to share the sounds and sights and speeds of it. So we saw what they'll do during the day, minimum and max brightness, but now I want to see what they actually do when you attach them to a telescope. And here's the Gemini flat panel closing. I'm going to unclip my mic and put it right up to the motor so you can see how loud it is. That's pretty quiet. And let's turn the brightness up. Let me get on this side. At night, you can see, so that's max brightness there. There is some, light coming out of the sides, but I think that's to be expected. And then that's on its dimmest settings. You should turn it off before you open it when you're getting ready to do your imaging at night. I want to do, one of the concerns I think a lot of people have with the no-name flat panels is flickering, because sometimes when you're doing your flat frames, you're taking exposures in such short amount of time that you might catch a flicker. This Gemini one specifically is advertised as having no flicker. All right, so what we've got here is both under a high-speed camera. This is only 240 frames per second, and they're both at max brightness. And I just set the Wanderer Astro to its minimum brightness, which is 1. And I'm about to do the same for the Gemini. As a reminder, the Gemini is on the left, it's the smaller one, and the Wanderer Astro is on the right, it is the larger one. But you can see that the Wanderer Astro at its lowest brightness, at 240 frames per second, doesn't have any visible flickering. There's a small piece of lint on there. That is not a defect of the panel, that is actually just something that fell on there after I started filming this. And we can now see the Gemini on the left, which is down to its lowest setting under the high illumination mode. And then I'm going to switch it to its lowest setting under the low illumination mode. But even here you can tell there's no flickering. The panels look about evenly illuminated. This is actually really, really good from both. And this now is the Gemini at its lowest possible setting. This is the low illumination with 1 out of 255. You can tell it, even in darkness, it's very, very dim. And even in these settings, there is no flicker at all. So I think when it comes to these two panels, when the Gemini is in its high illumination mode, it's 1 to 255, pretty closely matches the Wanderer Astro. If anything, it gets a little bit brighter. But the Gemini does have this really cool ability to get even dimmer if you want it. And just to be thorough, I want to see what the, what my nights are going to be like now that I have an automatic flat panel. So we're now in Nina. I've got my 2600 MC connected. It's cooled down to its cool temperature. I got my focuser connected, and I've just got my flat panel connected here. This is the Gemini Astro. You can see it's reporting its driver version, things like that. The brightness, I just have it set at 100, and it's currently open. And I've got a view of the outside down here so that you can see what is actually happening. So to do flats with this, I should just be able to go to the flat wizard and tell it, hey, I want to take 12 flats. You don't need to move the mount. We're going to do dynamic brightness. And so what dynamic brightness will do is adjust the brightness of that flat panel so that it gets the histogram, which is this graph down here in the bottom right corner, to what we need it to be at. And so I put in, minimum flat panel brightness 1, max 255, exposure time ½ second with the ASI 2600. I think a ½ second exposure for a flat is probably fine, but I'll do some more experimental on this. And your histogram should be about halfway. The histogram is basically, the average brightness of the average pixel, and you want that to be, halfway. So anyways, to start my night, I should just be able to click play, and let's see what it does. Okay, so it is, yep, it's closing the flat panel, which is awesome. I'm looking out the window of my office right now. And once the flat panel is closed, it will toggle the light on, and there it goes. The light is now on. It has the brightness set to, it's going to set the brightness to 128, and it's going to try and take its image, and it's going to stretch that. And you can see in the histogram, again, this graph on the bottom, that the peak is all the way to the right. That's way too bright for a flat. So it's going to automatically cut the brightness down on the panel, and it's going to take another picture. And that one is also way too far to the right. It's again cutting the panel brightness down. Oh, we're getting a little bit closer. You can see it's starting to move. There we go. This is what a flat looks like. It's all the dust motes you see are those bigger gray circles, and then the vignetting you can see as the brightness in the middle, and then the light falls off as you get closer to the edges. And it just took its 12 calibration images, it turned the light off, and it's now opening the cover. So this is the sort of automation that I'm looking for, that I think will make our nights a lot easier when we're running the setup, especially if we're going to be running remote in the future. This is the sort of automation that we need. So that's awesome. That's what it actually feels like to use the flat wizard with the Gemini flat panel. All right. This has been a really exciting advancement for astrophotography, especially here at Deep Sky Lab, using things like these panels as opposed to using a white shirt stretched over the front of the telescope. And the automation that we can get with these motors is going to be amazing. I think the quality differences between the Wanderer Astro and the Gemini aren't that big. They're both, huge carbon fiber panels with aluminum housings. They attach to the telescope in basically the same way. If you just told me, without me knowing anything, that they were produced in the same factory, I'd probably believe you. The Wanderer Astro software is nicer, and the fact that this has a built-in sort of dew heater is also really nice, but I don't know that it justifies double the price. The support might, so if you need support for your hardware, then paying the extra price for the Wanderer Astro, or, this is without even talking about things like the Prima Luce Labs ones, which are even more expensive. I bet they're worth it. I'm not saying that they're not worth it, but if you're trying to do this a little bit on a budget, then the Geminis aren't a bad deal. It's not a scam. They function well. I would probably get reusable zip ties for it. Actually, I will get reusable zip ties for it. That's what the Wanderer Astro came with, is nice reusable zip ties. But I have one more flat panel to buy, and that's going to be for my Celestron Edge HD 11. And I'm not going to buy the Wanderer Astro one. I'm going to buy the Gemini that fits on there because the software does everything I needed to do. Shipping time is a bit high. I think it took me 3 weeks to get that one, versus these you can buy, you can buy one of these from Agena and get it in a couple days. So if you can, the Gemini is a really, really good deal. Just like their focus cubes have been a really good deal. But if you can't wait that long, or you really do need that extra level of support, then these Wanderer Astro panels are awesome. I can tell you, I'm actually holding this in my hand. I really like these. But the Geminis, go buy one. They're great. If you can find the right price for them on eBay, they're a really, really good value. And yeah, for Deep Sky Labs, I'm Francisco. Clear skies. I'll have links down in the description for the software that I found for the Gemini, because that's the sort of weird thing, is finding the right drivers. And then some like Amazon searches for some of these, although they don't usually come up on Amazon. But if you click the link, it's like an affiliate link. It'll send you over to Amazon with the active search. Sometimes they do show up. So clear skies, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate all of the comments and feedback, and I do try responding to all the comments when I can. But this is sort of a side gig for me. It's a thing I do. It's out of the the passion that I really have for this hobby. So sometimes it takes me a couple days to respond to comments, but please go down there and let me know what you think.